let's move on. Our featured guest today, and I appreciate his patience while we've gone through all of our other news and views, is Scott Mann. And I think we all know what Sunset Third Rail is all about. And I really appreciate Scott making himself available. Scott and I have done a good amount of business over the years, and I'm always pleased with and appreciative of the level of customer service and responses he gets. I've basically told Scott that he can talk about whatever he wants to talk about and not talk about whatever he wants to keep quiet for now. But if we can coax him out on some pending projects and some larger views of what's going on in the China and in the market and in the future, I think it would be good. We will save some time for Q&A after his little talk. So Scott, tell us what you want to tell us.
Hey guys, it's good to see you. I haven't seen some of your faces in several years since the pandemic started. And the business has been crazy. I mean, everybody was at home, opening their boxes, playing with their trains, and calling us, wanting something new, wanting to fix something old. And we were really, really busy. And then we had to send people home for a couple months. And I was basically the only one going into the office and taking care of all of these requests and orders and such, which it was fine because I wasn't traveling, because you couldn't go anywhere. I mean, I traveled about 30% of my time back and forth to the factory. Sometimes I would fly to the York Show in Pennsylvania, and I'd take a nonstop flight to Beijing from there so that I could, get to the factory in time to see the end of one project, the beginning of another project, to attend the design meetings, things like that. I took it all very seriously, all of the production stuff, very, very seriously. And I felt like if I made a mistake and things came in and they were a problem, it hurts us financially. It hurts us in the sense that we lose our reputation very rapidly. You're only as good as your last project. So what did I do to be able to keep things going without being able to actually go over there and look at this stuff? Well, we set up video, a lot more video monitoring of samples. We had pictures taken of every single unit, top, bottom, front, back, sideways, and that way I was actually able to see QC much better than when I'd go to the factory. If I went to the factory, they were never done. When I got there, they would be running diesels around without pilots on, or something was missing this part because it hadn't been finished yet. And they, I don't know, maybe they were stalling and waiting for me to go back home, and I would go back home, and then the models would be finished and packed up just days later. So now they have to send me pictures of every single unit. Me and I have a production manager who used to live across the street from the factory. He lives in Korea, and he basically handles all the communication with the factories, so that we review the designs, we review any engineering problems that might come up when we're making something. You have to realize, we're not like making the same model car again and again and again. Every project is totally different and has its own set of problems and its own behavior on the track. And we try our best to work all those bugs out before things go in boxes. And so it actually worked out pretty well. And I've been able to live my life at home and go to the office most days and get everything done overseas as well. Although the overseas stuff, their day is over at 3 a.m. here. So I get up early in the morning, sometimes 1, 2 in the morning, to catch the very end of their day. And then I'll go back to sleep and get up and go to the office. And it can be hectic at times. And the customer service is really high on our list. So that's a big challenge. There's a lot of time involved with the customer service, but you guys probably know Shawnee, and she takes care of everybody. And I like to get all my customer service done through emails because I'm up at 2 a.m. And when I'm at the office, I'm busy with, everything going on at the office instead of trying to handle, who needs this screw or this pilot or this part. So if you want these things from us, just send me an email. You have my email from our website and such. As for the Chicago show, I was planning on going to it, but I ran into some family issues. And there's a gentleman who's been working with me for the last 15 years. And he is probably one of the most astute diesel modeler of every kind, cars, diesels, mostly turned, what do you call it, transitionary time frame up to modern. And his name is Jonathan Pfeiffer. And boy, if you get in front of him at the show and start talking details of, let's say, an SD40-2 with this railroad or another railroad, he knows the differences. And he can rattle off sometimes even engine numbers or phases or what have you. I can't keep track of all of that. We're doing 25 to 30 road names at a time. And he helps me build a matrix of all the detailed differences. And then we communicate that to the design team. And he and some of you and other people around the country who are interested in particular road names, like you, David, with your fascination with nickel plate. And we go through all of these details together. And he's been doing this with me for 15 years. So I sent him to the Chicago show. He was very happy to go. And some people didn't realize that we were attending the show. So I got some comments from people, we didn't see you at the show. But surely Jonathan was there answering anybody's questions that bumped into him at our table. So right now, things in China are a little iffy. We got over this container issue where we normally paid about $1,500 for a 20-foot container. And this last container came in, was $13,000 for a 20-foot container delivered to the Bay Area. And that hurts. And so we packed as much as we could into it. We had 3 projects in there. And so we're amortizing that extra cost over all these different projects. And then things are now calming down, I've heard, and prices are coming back to normal, which we all kind of expected after a period of time. So that container issue is now not a problem, but I'm sure you've all heard China's like locking down city after city every time someone gets the sniffles over there. And that's causing some issues where they can't get like bearings sent from one area of China to our factory, or people are stuck at home for a period of time, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and things like that. Kind of the same things that we were dealing with in the beginnings of the pandemic, they're dealing with now. And but I got to tell you, the people that make our stuff and make the trains for you guys, they're just the nicest, sweetest people. There's no political attitude over there. Like I said, I have a Korean production manager, and this Chinese factory used to work under him when they were owned by a owned by a Korean company, and they broke away and formed their own group. And then and they said, Scott, we don't want to own the factory. We want you to own the factory. I said, I don't want to own a Chinese factory. Let me tell you, you just own it yourself, and I'll order models from you. And so they very faithfully work with me and Mr. Kwan over in Korea, and Jonathan and the design team, which is a Korean design team with Chinese designers. And that's kind of how things are done over in Eastern Asia. And we're able to still produce this stuff. And as long as you guys buy it, as long as you guys order it, I will keep making them. It's that simple. I don't have favorites of my own. I poll people at the shows, at the online, on the forums. What do you guys want? and what should we be focusing on next. So that's where I'm at, and that's where our business is. This business is still going fine, and I just lost all my hair in the process. I don't know. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Why don't you start by telling us what projects are in the pipeline now that you can talk about, and if you can't talk completely about them, give us some juicy hints.
Okay, so I've been dealing with Amtrak, and we've been licensed to make Amtrak stuff and use their marks. And we've been working very closely with their branding manager over there. And he likes our stuff and he wants us to continue. So he's actually helped us get permission from Siemens to make the charger. So we're going to be announcing that in the next round of advertising and newsletters and things like that. And as you know, when we announce something, it doesn't mean we've already started production. We are basically testing the waters. And if we see a lot of activity initially, I pretty much know if I get, 50 or 75 orders for something in a couple of weeks, it's going to go. And if we get 10 orders and maybe we get to 50 in about 6 months, it's probably not going to go. And we need the numbers to pay for all the tooling, design costs, and things like that. So we always shift all our focus over to things that are popular and profitable, so that the business can continue. So to answer your question, we're looking at doing some Amtrak diesels. We're looking at the Superliner cars. We're looking at rerunning the Am Fleet and the Viewliner cars, as well as the different, there's Viewliner 1 and Viewliner 2 and Am Fleet 1 and Am Fleet 2. So we're going to expand on that because people want that stuff. We're moving headway into the SD40-2 project, and we're in the design phase right now. And that's where Jonathan kicks in and gets all of the details managed. Unfortunately, he is a model railroader, true and true, and he's with his wife traveling on the Rocky Mountaineer for the next couple days, weeks, or whatever. So he'll be working on this once he's back in town. We're working on the Milwaukee Road EP3 electric. It's coming along very well. The tooling is done. The design is done. I've asked the folks at ESU to modify our electronic file so it's compatible with the Milwaukee Road EP3s. And so all that is coming together and will go into production very shortly. Right now, the factory is working on the EA and the E1s, and we just got a couple samples of them. There's a few little corrections, some minor truck issue where it's touching the pilot on curves and 3-rail. And I have to remind you, you guys are very focused on O-scale 2-rail. And there's a whole nother group of guys over there in 3-rail that are just as determined to have accuracy as you. Although their track, they got this funny thing in the middle of their track, the middle rail, and they run around tight little curves so they can have it in their basement. But without the 3-rail orders, financially, this wouldn't work. We would just be like another, small business trying to produce things for $5,000-$6,000 a piece, like some of the other importers have done until they couldn't anymore. So diesels and aluminum cars are where we are focusing our production, because that's where we get our orders. And the steam engines just can't seem to get enough steam to even get 100 orders together to produce. And as we wait, the cost of brass goes up, the cost of etching goes up. All of these things make it more and more difficult to produce something for a reasonable price. And so I kind of shy away from those things, and I focus on things that I can produce with certainty, and with certainty in price as well. and I'm getting enough orders for it. So we have the EP3 coming, the EA E1s, and we did a second run of the Milwaukee Road cars. So we're going to be done with Milwaukee Road now. And we're rerunning our New York Central 20th Century cars, updating all the interiors and putting ball bearing supports on all the axles. And it makes them pretty spectacular to run even in two-rail O-scale, because engines without rubber tires can pull these things, even though they weigh 1.5, 2 pounds each. We're going to do some reruns of diesels we did in the last 5 years, like the SD 7s and 9s, the GP 7s and 9s, and the SD40-2, of course. Just finished the Kraus Maffei or Kraus Maffei locomotive. We only made 175 pieces of that, and they're pretty much sold out. We have a couple in SP and Denver, Rio Grande, 2-rail, but 3-rail's completely sold out. Really only made about 75 of them in 3-rail and 100 of them in 2-rail. So in some cases, 2-rail O-scale is a stronger market than 3-rail. Didn't used to always be that way. It used to be like 1 to 4, where it was 4 times more orders coming from 3-rail. So things are different now, and we are focused on the 2-rail O-scale market. I forgot to mention, we finished the run of the 120-ton Virginian gondolas, and those are supposed to be on a boat right now, and we should get them in about a month and a half. And that's what I know right now. If you guys have any questions.
Yeah, by way of a sort of a follow-up and without revealing any trade secrets, talk about the way you look at potential models in terms of packages, of numbers, dollars, etc., because I think that's something that most modelers don't necessarily know about, and it may help explain some of the reluctance you have to get into further steam projects.
Yeah, so there's quite a steep design fee. These guys are really sharp. They make the tooling drawings along with the complete drawings of steam locomotive or diesels. And in the diesels, we do an ABS molded body, but the rest is built up like an O-scale diesel. Any O-scale diesel, you have a metal frame and a motor mounted horizontally, and the trucks are die cast usually. And if it's a very small quantity of trucks, like a special truck that was on a run of diesels, we'll do them in brass. And it's a little more expensive per unit, but if you have higher quantity, then die cast would be the way to go. And the detail's great on die cast. And the material is more pure today than it has been, and you don't get that Zymac rust or whatever you call it, where they end up falling apart after 5 years. So to answer your question, I look at the numbers, and that's why I announced 25 roads at the same time to see, can we get to 300 or 400 units total for a run of diesels? And if we can afford to go through all of the design process, which is expensive, and then the tooling process, which is really expensive, and all that. We have overhead, we have employees, and we have warehouse that costs a lot of money now. Things have gone up 50% in just the last couple of years as far as warehouse costs. I'm looking to get a little smaller in the warehouse, because per square foot out here it's about $1.50, and I'm sure in a few more years it'll be $2. But so that's what we do. We put our feelers out there, and when we start getting the numbers that will afford this business that we're running, then we'll continue, and we'll make that project and focus on it and get it produced. And me, I'm into model planes. I'm an RC model airplane nut. And in fact, this morning we were out there with weed whackers because the city was going to come look at our airfield, and there was about 5 acres of weeds that needed to be cut down, and about 20 of us got out there and did that this morning, and they tempted us with barbecue. So that's what I do in my off time. And I'm a modeler just like you guys. I kit bash, build planes up from scratch and, put electronics in them and fly them around. I crash them too, like everybody else, and rebuild them. So I have a, I feel for you guys. When you need something for your models, I have the same feeling when I need something for mine. Now, I played with trains when I was a little kid, and Dad, who started Sunset back in 1974, he had our whole garage filled with an HO layout. He never did the scenery, but he had trestles and electronic switches. He used to work for Fairchild, so we got all these boxes of new LEDs and electronics that had never existed before. And he would spend his time, working on electronic switch machines and things like that. So he got me some N scale trains, so I would stay out of his hair, and he'd leave him alone so he could work on his stuff. And I built a 4x8 foot N scale layout with mountain scenes, and I didn't know what the diesel was. Now I think it's probably an F3 and UPF3 because it was yellow. But I just didn't know much about trains. And when I got through all of my aerospace and my career as an engineer and decided I really wanted to be in my own business, I approached Dad and said, let's build this up, because we saw that the 3-rail market was exploding and that it was, a time to build the business up and do more things. So I joined him in 97, and I was 32 years old, and I'm now 59. So I've spent a big part of my life working on these projects, and each project I've learned quite a bit about the trains. So every prototype, you mentioned that someone there mentioned that you bought a Q2 at the show. I remember designing and making that. Gary Yosley and I used to spread the drawings out on the carpet at Sunset Models and go over all the details with books out and photos. Gary is a very interesting character. He really loves trains. He loves the customers. And but he was a carpenter, and he was a flooring carpenter. So that's why we got on the floor with the drawings. It was easier, and he was used to that. And when I was 32, I could do that. I can't think I could do that right now. So that's how we continue the business for all these years, is just following what the customers want.
Thank you, Scott. You have time to take some questions and hear some comments
Absolutely.
from the people. Let's start at
Sure.
the rough beginning of the alphabet, simply because that will limit everybody talking at once. So we'll start with Bruce and go on through the C's and the D's and so on. Any questions or comments in the early part of the alphabet?
Sure, I have a couple of things. Scott, I begged, gnawed at you, crawled at you, everything I could to get that C&O Streamline Hudson done. And I really just want to tell you how happy I am with that. That is just a beautiful locomotive. I'm really glad that.
Thank you. I'll have to hand it to Jack McGarry. He worked with me on the details of that all the way through design and production. We argued about the colors a little bit because somebody, I can't remember who, gave me the color chips from the C&O Historical Society, which we, used faithfully. But the early orangey color, the C&O orangey color, I don't know, Jack didn't really think that was right, but that's the color we used. And he still bought his engines, and he's happy as well. So I'm very glad that you're happy with that. I went to the B&O Railway Museum with Bob Heil, who is, as you know, our East Coast rep, and he does the Strasbourg show for me. And well, I think he does it for him, but I'm grateful that he represents me there. He's a great guy.
He was
and we
there.
went to yeah, and we
there.
went, yes, and we went to the B&O Railway Museum and crawled all over the engine there, and all those pictures that I took and all of the data folks sent me, and they all went into the hands of the designers, and that's the result, because they really know their job.
So my next suggestion for projects would be possibly what is now run as a Western Maryland scenic railroad, the C&O 1309 articulated. And I guess my first favorite diesel, which hasn't been done in quite some time, and the pieces that are out there are, in my humble opinion, are grossly overpriced, but the GP30.
GP30 is okay.
Yeah.
All right. Email me, Bruce.
Will do.
Then I've got it. Then I've got it committed to memory. I can pass it on to, the other guys that help me make these decisions
Will
and get
do.
it announced. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep on trickling down the alphabet.
Sure.
Who else has got a comment on the front end of the,
I do have.
okay, tell us.
Scott, number,
Hi,
this
Jim.
Jim Cantor.
Yeah. Hi,
Uh,
Jim. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Number
Good.
one, stay 59. Just stay there. Okay. Don't go any further. All right. Number two
Yeah.
is that the Golden Gate cars are phenomenal. One of the things that all O-scalers talk about, whether we're 3-rail or 2, are how nice those cars are.
Thank
And
you.
how you changed the model railroading industry with those cars. For
Wow.
years, when your dad was in business, I mean, none of us could ever find passenger cars. And not only to find a nice car, but they're beautifully detailed, wonderful paint jobs. They change everything that we do in O-scale today. We plan our
Wonderful.
layouts a little differently to design to accommodate those cars. I'm working on another set of the 1948 Penceys. I've just about got them proto 48'd, but I can tell you they're wonderful cars. The B&O cars are phenomenal. The New York Central are great. I have one of the Hudsons I just got off of David, the C&O, and they're phenomenal. That's a great steam engine. But you're doing the SD9s, you did the Jeeps. It's great stuff. Having DCC in there, and I'll tell you the other thing that you've done. You worked in concert with Jay Criswell on being able to proto 48 these engines where it's a drop in, and
Sure.
it's been really great. But I could tell you, you've changed O-scale and made it just a little better for everyone. So
Well,
stay
I do
59.
it. I do it
and we're
for
all
you
gonna be
guys. I do it for you guys. Just ask.
happy. Well,
And
we'll create
got-
a big. Go ahead.
I got to tell you guys a funny story, because I think you all know Richard Dunn, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys all know Richard. So Richard is a Santa Fe fan, and he bought a set of our early aluminum Santa Fe Super Chiefs. And these were very basic cars. This was one of our first aluminum car sets, and it was modeled after K-Line. K-Line had gone out of business, and we didn't have their tooling, but we had their cars, and we could see how they were made. And so we kind of, lifted a few ideas off of those cars, and made them based on the drawings that I saw in the Pullman books, the red, Pullman books, and or other books. And Richard came to me after he got his cars, and he said, nice cars. He said, but how come there's no roof detail? And I showed him the drawings I used. I said, it's a line drawing, but it doesn't show any roof detail. So I assumed there was no roof detail. And he said, next time you do a project, let me come help you. So he's involved, like Jonathan. He comes over and we go over the drawings, we go over the ideas, and he makes sure that we have roof detail on the car. So it still is a collaborative thing. I couldn't do it by myself. I'm not a railroad aficionado, but I am humble enough to let other people drive the boat for a little while, and get these things done to the way you guys want. I mean, what else? How else can you further a business? You have to listen to your customers. So
Standing.
anyway,
Joe,
thanks, Jim. Thank you,
Joe,
Jim.
Hey,
Joe-
Scott, one more comment. Have you
Yeah.
ever been to Muncie, Indiana, to the National Miniature Aviation Museum?
No, I haven't.
Okay, if you ever come out
I
this
have.
way, I live
Okay.
50 miles from there. And it's a great place, but it's their national headquarters, I guess.
Oh, wow. It's a, what is it? What's the group?
I think it's the national headquarters of AMA. What's that called?
Oh, AMA. That's right. That's where I saw Muncie, Indiana. Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
they have 900 acres and they have thousands of people there every year running these miniature planes. And
Yeah.
it's something to see. So if you ever get out this way, there's plenty of O scale to lay out and there's a whole lot of planes to see. So
There we go.
anytime.
Okay.
Joe Jimmy, you had a question? You're muted right now.
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks for joining, Scott.
Hi, Joe.
First of your products I bought was two Southern Railway F3s. I was
Yes.
floored by them. Those are the most fantastic diesel I've seen in any scale in model
Thank
railroad.
you.
So,
Thank you so much.
well detailed, run well, and I was really pleased with them, and that's why I ordered those E6s and another in your second run of GP9s. I ordered 3 of the N&W, so it's really
And
happy.
you see, you're one of the new guard because you don't have gray hair unless
yeah,
you've been dyeing your hair.
that's between you and I.
Okay.
You know, I got to tell you, the O-scale 2-rail is legendary for having, a membership comprised almost exclusively of geezers. But that's not really the case. It's amazing. There are a large number of people like Joe and Skylar who are on the call who have come out early and figured out that O-scale is just a very satisfying place to model. And I was quite impressed with the number of younger modelers who were at Chicago. And I was impressed with the number of younger modelers who were at Strasbourg just recently. These are
There is
people
life. There is life beyond, there is more life
Yeah.
to it.
Cool.
So,
Next.
I see it all the time. I see new people coming all the time. They're in their 40s and 50s, asking questions. Sometimes they end up in 3-rail, but they really are 2-railers. And so they quickly switch over. They come to
Well-
a company like ours where they have a choice.
Walter Harlocker, you got your hand up.
hey, David, I did have
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on one sec. Go ahead, Joe. Finish
Hey,
up, and then we'll go to Walter.
question for you, Scott. Is there any interest in possibly doing any more ready to run freight cars? I ordered a couple of the Virginian battleship gondolas. I was wondering if there was any more interest in continuing to make freight cars. I know I'd be interested in some Norfolk and Western steam era hoppers.
Well, if it hasn't been done a million times before by, MTH and Lionel and all these other guys, and I know the 2-railers will take the 3-rail cars and convert them because sometimes they're actually a nice scale car.
There's a couple prototypes they made,
Yeah.
but they're not. They've been kind of limited, and I don't think they'd have the same amount of detail as say if Sunset or Third Rail did a variation of it. And there's also a couple holes that I think a couple of brass importers did, but by and large, there's quite a few of the N&W hoppers that just haven't been done.
Let's get together online and talk about it. And if there's a hole in the market, we'll try to fill it.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll do that. I think I have your email, so I'll be reaching out to you soon. So thank
Excellent,
you,
Joe.
Scott. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Walter, your turn.
Yes, I just wanted to piggyback off of Jim Cantor. He summed up pretty well about the cars. I do have those Milwaukee road cars on order in the UP yellow. And I just wanted to say that the only thing I need now is locomotives to pull them in the same paint scheme. So that's all I'm really looking for. Is I know that you've had a lot of releases, E8s, F7s, but they've been in the earlier Milwaukee paint schemes and nothing in the UP yellow paint scheme. So if I don't know if there's enough
Okay.
demand for it. If not, I'd have to have something custom painted. But I just wanted to
He-
add on that, and I wanted to say hello
Okay.
real quick to Jim. He came down to our Florida meet, and we shared a few beers. I just wanted to say hello.
Okay.
All right. Moving on through the alphabet. Who's up next? We can't possibly have run out of.
I'll say something. Scott, good to see you. It's Dan Doughty here.
Oh, hey, Dan. Where are you? There you are.
I'm over here, yeah. As you can see by my background, we had a rough week around here. But I just want to say two things. One, it's refreshing to see an importer who, when they announce something, actually delivers within a reasonable time frame. There's just too many importers out there, both in plastic and in brass, that announce things and there's nothing ever happens. They take your money and nothing ever happens. And it's still amazing to me that you work on the honor system as far as reservations and,
Well,
and upfront money.
I feel for them because we've been there when we were making the Erie Berkshires. It was the second project we were making in the Philippines, and it was a Korean guy who used to have a factory in China. He went with Boo Rim and he opened up shop in the Philippines, and they shared a warehouse and workers. And the previous project was the Penzi L1 that we made in the Philippines. Came out great. And I remember coming to the factory and there were two gals testing the models on the track, and they spoke perfect English. I mean, everywhere else I went in Korea and China, they couldn't speak any English and basically had to have a translator, translate anything. And I was able to talk to them and tell them, oh, look for the chuff sequence and how the fan works. And we went to lunch, came back, and they were all done. And so I thought, oh, this is the future. But there's a problem over there, and they have a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of gun violence, and they'll bring it into the factories. If you let a worker go, they'll come after you. So they left. They left. And my project, with the help of Boo Rim, he got it exported through Korea into China. And then we had to store it for about 6 months in China while we worked out the logistics of getting it built again. And so if I was another importer and that was my only project, I would have been up the creek, But we have many projects going on. So we have a cash flow thing, and we have projects in different stages constantly with the same people. And I separate factory from design from tooling. They're all separate little company entities, and they are little companies, and they can come and go. And if you start a project in Korea with someone you met at the show, that he gave you a business card, and you go over there and they wine you and dine you and say, oh yeah, we can do this project for you, no problem. Just send us 30% down and we'll begin. And that's where the trouble starts. So it is a little, sketchy sometimes. And I know some of the importers that are trying to finish their stuff right now, they're running into brick walls. And with the pandemic, you can't go over there, even to confiscate your stuff. So I feel for them. And so we watch that very carefully. And I'm in constant contact with these people. We all pretty much trust each other and don't try to, do anything underhanded, so that we can continue. Because they know if they do, it's over. And I'd stop the business and just, I guess, retire. Too young to retire, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We are at this point somewhere in the middle of the alphabet. Anybody in the middle of the alphabet need a question or comment? If not, let's move on further down the line to the R's and the S's and down there. Jamie. Yeah. Jamie, you need to, there you go. You're unmuted.
Hi,
Thanks.
Jamie.
All right. Appreciate the opportunity. One of the things that a lot of us look for are smaller locomotives, EMD switchers, for example. Atlas did theirs, and there's been, the 44 tonners and stuff like that. But, I'm still looking for a couple of decent either Alco or EMD type switchers. So I don't know how much demand there is for that kind of thing, but there sure is some interest.
You'd think that you do a smaller diesel with, fewer drivers and a smaller footprint, that it would be cheaper, but it's not. It's the same cost for us. And when I look at it business wise, you're trying to sell the small model to people who are expecting a smaller price to go along with that smaller model. And it usually doesn't work out very well. If the diesels have already been done, say by Atlas or MTH, Atlas is now tapping into all of MTH's tooling. And that means with very little notice, they can start up production very cheaply and undercut me. And I would be doing everything that I have to do on a big diesel project to make the small diesel. So that's why I kind of avoid them.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Other questions for Scott?
I got a couple of questions for him.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Scott. How you doing?
Good.
I wanted to start off with the fact that I started working full time in 2020, and my first paycheck went to two GP9. So just wanted to put that out there. Now, as far as my experience with your company, I want to start off by thanking for what you do in having as many different roads as you have for the offerings. In the club that I'm involved with, whenever there's a shipment, we all live in roughly the same, 100-mile radius area. So we usually get them at the same time. So whenever we have an order come in, it'll be on a Tuesday, there'd be 12 different boxes. Everybody's unboxing, and it seems like Christmas. So it's very good. And we thank you again for all you do. I had a couple quick questions.
Sure.
This is something that David and I were talking about when I visited him in October, as far as fictitious railroads, as far as a what-if scenario. So rather than NKP being bought out by Norfolk Western, what if they continued and had their own SD40s? I would assume that the answer would come around to what the demand would be for that amount of road. So that would be the first question. Second one would be your switch from QSI to lock sound decoders, what you've been experiencing, how they've been working out. Our club has some issues with lock sound, but wouldn't be too big of a change. See, Locksound is a German company, and they're looking for a very, very, very clean DCC signal. So again, nothing on you. I understand what you have to do for the change, but just curious as to how the rollout's been. And then last thing would be, I want to second or third the GP30 idea. That's just me being a nickel plate modeler, and we haven't really had that many GP30s. I don't know, maybe MTH did them at some point, but they haven't been done in quite some time. So I definitely second that. And again, thank you.
Okay. So on the ESU issue and the QSI issue, I can't really speak for QSI, but I was negotiating with them on getting the last batch of their ASIC chip. So ASIC is some sort of circuit design production process, and it's now 20 or 30 years old, and they couldn't even find a vendor to make their chip for them anymore. So basically, guys, this chip had everything that used to be on a circuit board was all put on a chip, and it was all pre-designed, and so your design was now frozen. You lose the flexibility, and it was very expensive to make. $180,000 to make a batch of ASIC chips, and they just didn't have the market for that. So I was going to buy the last bunch, and we had some disagreements, and then I decided I better look for another vendor because these guys aren't going to be long in the tooth. And we had a lot of people asking about, why don't you use Lokesound, ESU? And we had some experience with them many years ago when we did the Flying Scotsman. We used one of their earlier steam units, and it just didn't work as well as QSI at the time. But we got some samples, and we thought it was doing quite well. I'm not aware of the signal, DCC signal issues. I haven't heard complaints from people. I was concerned that people will be confused by the different commands, like you know, you have to turn the lights on every time you start up the engine, unless you change the program to do it for you differently. And where's the reset switch? You know, QSI always had a reset switch, and the ESU guys are pretty funny. They're like, why do we need a reset switch? It doesn't ever lock up. So I haven't had a lot of feedback from people. I haven't had a lot of negative feedback about the 2-rail ESU. So I tend to, you know, I learned my production management skills in aerospace, building airplanes in a production line, and you just don't want to change things. If you change things, you have to go through a big study to find out what goes wrong. So, you know, the motto was, don't do production on an engineering schedule. And so I never change the electronics or the mechanism if I don't absolutely have to, and unless there's a big reason why. And I can't remember what your first question was. GP30s?
No,
Was that your last?
fictitious railroads, different paint schemes.
Okay,
for
so
what
you know, anybody can come and do a custom road if they'll pony up for, you know, 10, 15 models.
ifs. Okay,
And
it's a
if you
good
get a
answer.
bunch
That's
of
really
friends,
what I expected.
you get a bunch of friends together. Now, I do run into a situation, and this is recent, and you know, people don't understand there's tipping points when you do a project with the factory. They're working really hard. They're really skilled at what they do. And you ask them to do 20 road names, 20 different detail differences in their production. They're doing maybe 10, 15, 20 of each road name at a time. It's expensive for them. The paint is expensive. The decals sometimes, you know, when you put a decal on a black surface and then there's an orange surface next to it, the decal color changes. So you have to adjust for that. So there's a lot of reordering of decals, a lot of paint samples going back and forth. One sample of paint from custom color costs $150 to them. And so if I ask them for all of these things, all of these new roads, and you know, they came back to me and they said, anything over 20 roads, there's going to be an extra fee attached. It's pretty big. So if we're already at 20 roads and someone wants to do a custom run, it's probably going to have to wait for the second production, you know, the second round of production to fit that in. So these are just some of the limitations that I have working with this particular group. And I've heard limitations that MTH had or Atlas had at their factories, and they, you know, needed 25 models of every paint scheme before they would, you know, okay it, things like that. And we're actually, you know, less than that. So we can do more road names. It's a little more expensive, you know, the model price is higher, but I think you're getting quality, you're getting unbelievable variety in this stuff.
Absolutely. Again,
And GP30 sounds interesting, but I'm also afraid that, you know, the other guys are going to just pop up with it and start taking away market share in such a small market. I mean, we're just this little pond of people buying models, you know. Too many fish in the pond.
Additional comments or questions for Scott?
This is Kent from the Boston area. I love the GP30 idea. On control, I'm actually dropping out of DCC and going to radio control because it runs on any power source that it's looking for. And I never, ever have it stall out because it's not looking for a signal from track. It's talking locomotive to controller. I don't have to worry about CVs or any of that other stuff. Everything I want to do is just in the control. I want to change the lights, great. Want a different belt, put it in. So I'm wondering if there's any option to be able to get something without a DCC in it so that I can go into my radio control.
So it's great that you have a way that you like your models. Again, I'm doing 25 road names, 2-rail and 3-rail, different cab numbers for each. I have to keep this variety going. We don't want to ask people, what engine number do you want? Because what if we only made 2 of engine number 40, and we have 3 people that want engine number 40, and we have other engine numbers. So we try to keep, the people make suggestions and they make requests for engine numbers and things like that. But as you can see, we're running into many, they call them SKUs, item types in a production run. And another, if you remove the DCC from this model, that doubles the number of SKUs for the entire project. And it creates a lot of confusion. What do they do with the lighting, the wires for the lighting? How do they QC the model on the track? They have to learn how to run a model without the DCC decoder in it. So I try to stay away from adding more complexity to this production process. And if you want to take the guts out and sell your ESU unit on eBay, go for it.
I have been doing that. I've been getting rid of them because I like the operation. Do you have design sheets so that it's easier to know how to take it out of the locomotive, even though I would have to purchase it with the DCC in it?
We can provide the wire diagram for it. I mean, as far as taking it out, it just plugs in. It's got a 9-pin plug, two 9-pin plugs that handle all the lights, 4-pin plug, track power and motor power, 2-pin plug for something else. I can't remember. It's really not that complicated as far as wiring. And in fact, we made the base unit for the ESU so that anybody who has a QSI unit could buy our ESU boards and with some programming, plug them right in and take their QSI units out if they're not enjoying that. And I've heard a lot of people not enjoying those because they're very difficult to program.
I thank you for that, but I'm more even interested in how do I take the model apart to even get into the wiring without damaging it?
They're usually just screwed together. 4 screws, you take off the tank, take off the bottom screws of the chassis that go up into the ABS body, and then they come apart. It's really it's not a puzzle.
All right, I was thinking it was more of a puzzle on it. I was just trying to even fix a coupler on the SD9s and trying to get it out to reposition the spring in there was sort of a little hassle, but thank you for everything you're doing, and I do enjoy running the models.
You're welcome.
I think we got some real insights into how the business works, how Scott thinks about the business. I think these are all not only indicative of the quality that we're getting out of Sunset Third Rail, but also give us food for thought. I'm going to give you two things to go with. The first is a compliment for Scott. There have been probably a couple of dozen different runs of Jeep 7s and Jeep 9s, and most of them were built on the prints that were published, I think, in Model Railroader back in the 60s, perhaps. And those prints erroneously left out a handrail support on the short hood on one side. And everybody, including some people who got an awful lot of money and who provided an awful lot of detail.
Is that why we got the stanchion wrong on that model?
Yes. Yeah, the original plan going back 40, 50 years was wrong, and nobody caught it. And nobody caught it. And somebody complained, and most people, most manufacturers, all the other 23 guys that did this said, not our problem. We followed the blueprints. I bought a number of the Jeep 7s and 9s from Scott, and I was quite surprised to get in the mail from him, unsolicited, a package of extra vertical supports and a little drawing of how to put them in. So I want to, at that level of perfection and that level of customer contact and service, I think is really, really important.
Well, I would expect the same. I would expect the same. So thank you, David. But I I expect the same from when I buy something online or whatever and something's missing. Yeah, and it's a detail that shouldn't have been missed. And I was pretty upset at Jonathan and Mr. Kwan over in Korea. It's like, what, how did design miss this? You know, it's in all the
Right.
pictures.
but-
Actually, looking at their drawings, you can't see there's a door seam. That's where the stanchion is. So you see a door seam and you think it's a stanchion in the drawing. But when you get the real one, then someone spotted it. So I want to tell one little story, David, real quick. When somebody finds a mistake on a model and they get on the OGR forum and they want to just make trouble for me or anybody else, point out a mistake like that, and it turns my business upside down. Now, Dad started with models that had no paint, no decals, no engine number, not even a lot. They just had a headlight and a backup light, I think, and some of the early HO stuff. And everybody did it themselves. They painted them themselves and detailed. So later on, he did a Norfolk and Western engine, and the models came in, 500 of them. Models came in, models went out. It's very successful. And then a week later, he gets a phone call from a customer, and he said, "Mort, get one of your models and bring it to your desk." And so he brought a model out. He said, "Look at one side of the tender. It says Norfolk and Western. Look at the other side, Western and Norfolk." But there was no internet. So people either just took care of it or decided that it wasn't important for them to complain. They could just take some champ decals and fix it. But today it's really a serious thing. We actually get a lot of returns and bad comments, and turns people off. So I'm very sensitive to that, and so that's why I take care of these little things.
Thank you. And
Okay.
and finally, actually, John, I got one little story to tell, but if you got a comment or question, John, I just saw your hand.
Yeah, Scott, I have your Texas type Chicago Great Western engine. Had to twist Ted Schneff's arm to get it. He had two. And the sister engine I noticed was running on the Elgin layout there when we were in the Lombard recently. So
Neat.
one other comment in regard to the GP30s, Chicago Great Western, of course, had a few sets of those, and I would definitely like to see those as well, like the other fellas.
Well, I'm pretty excited to see this. And the reason I used to go to Chicago as much as I did is because I got most of my new project ideas from folks like yourself that would come to the table and say, "You really got to do this, really got to do that." And then someone else would come in and say the same thing. And it's like, oh, there's a pattern here.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's something that people are wanting. So that's
Well, at our table, I had more fellas asking for SW1s. Nobody makes an SW1.
Yeah, I know.
So
we did an exercise on the SW1. We tried to see if we could fit our 3-rail electronics in it, and we couldn't. We could not.
Yeah.
So that erases the 3-rail side of the market for us.
Sure.
So did anyone ever make that in plastic?
Don't know.
Like did Atlas ever do SW1s?
I don't think
Not
so.
one, no.
No.
All right, I got one story, which is actually more for the people on the call and any subsequent broadcast of this, and that is we have an important lesson that Scott is passing along on how his project development works. And that is, he will send out an announcement with an expectation that the people who want it are going to support it in a fairly timely fashion. And if that doesn't happen, you will find that a project will dink along for a while and then it'll disappear. And I burned up a little bit of capital with Scott to say, look, maybe you need to be a little more flexible with the numbers why don't you try a small, this is on steam locomotive projects, why don't you try a smaller number with a higher price point for engines that are really needed and in demand? And the engine that he set on, we'll hypothetically call it a CNO 2666 Allegheny, had all kinds of promise. And it was posted and you had the opportunity to look at it. And after it was up a little while, all of a sudden, poof, it disappeared. And I had a guy come to me and said, you know, I really wanted that Allegheny. I thought he was going to do that. And all of a sudden it's gone. And I said, well, did you place a reservation? No, I didn't quite get around to it. I really wanted the engine, but you know, I thought I'll wait a little while for this. I'll save some money, maybe next quarter. If you don't do it, if you don't support the projects, they'll go away. And that's true whether it's a diesel of a particular road number, or in this case, a whole steam project. Now, I lost a little bit of skin on that because I really lobbied Scott to try something like that, and it didn't work out. And there were probably several people who, if they had gotten on board and supported that project a little earlier and a little more enthusiastically, we would have had that project. But if you snooze, you lose in this business. It is a business. He's got time deadlines, production schedules, and so on. And if the project doesn't make the cut, it's gone. It's gone. That's the way it's got to be. So if we want stuff, whether it's the Jeep 30 or something else, if you want it, you gotta step forward on it when you get the opportunity.
Well,
Right.
David, I still have hope on the Allegheny. It's still on our website, but I haven't gotten a reservation in like 6 months.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else for Scott? We need to let him go.
Anyway.
He's probably got some California things to do. I'm not sure what they do in California, but it seems to take him a lot of time. So in any event, I just can't thank you
Fly
enough, Scott,
airplanes.
for, yeah, I can't thank you enough, Scott, for taking your time to be with us today and perhaps to be with folks who haven't yet seen this, but will on a rebroadcast. I think it's been very
Well,
insightful in terms of the hobby.
It's my pleasure to see you guys again. I hope to see you at the shows.
All right, thank you. You can
Okay.
sign off if you're ready to, or you can stay with us. We're going to just have a brief closing and then we'll be done. But thanks very much again. Bye-bye.